So we'll start the second phase of the morning session. So first we'll have another debrief. So after the debrief on regulatory developments, I'll wait for a few minutes for everyone to get seated. Thank you. So this second phase of the morning session will be dedicated to another update on international by Mario Colavita. And then we'll have another part of the session dedicated to analysis of the feedback we received from you and additional feedback from Ian Devine. So I'm now calling the speakers of the next session, Mario Colavita, Ian Devine, Colin Hancock, and Ralph Bader. Gilles Garouste is going to join in a few minutes. So thank you, gentlemen. Welcome on stage. We could have done better for gender balance this morning. We'll do better next year. Mario, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Gregory. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Mario Colavita, and it's my privilege to be with you today and provide an update on major international developments in my new capacity of Certification Director's Office Section Manager. So basically, I have three challenges. The first one is to take your attention back to resume the meeting after such a beautiful coffee break. The second one is to replace Gregory that used to provide this brief in the past. And the third one is that for those of you who attended previous events, you may know that this update is, let's say, a recurrent topic. So I asked myself, what should I do to provide some character of novelty? And indeed, more than on the substance of the presentation, I thought it was appropriate to provide a different flavor in terms of structure of the presentation itself. And I wanted to start with information about the certification management team. So to provide you my personal outcomes of the experience that I gained during these months in my role. And also, why not, the very fresh information coming back from Brazil, where we had CMT week just last week. And to do that, I thought it was appropriate also to start from some background, so some short but historical background. Because this certification management team was established back in 2014, in occasion of a quadrilateral meeting in US, when it was thought that it was really needed to go for a governance structure that could efficiently and effectively cope with all the activities carried out by these main four authorities in the field of certification. And so when they signed the charter 1 year after, this was based on a very clear vision. I only report an extract for you. To use active confidence building initiatives and risk-based validation principles to accept partner certification activities with limited or no technical involvement. And this was accompanied by a very ambitious objective to implement risk-based validation principles and take immediate steps to eliminate technical involvement. So, to me, the most important point, anyhow, related to the CMT, maybe stands in something different. And again, I would like to extract a part of the background that was contained in that charter, where it was identified already by then, in 2015, the need to have greater collaboration among the authorities in order to harmonize regulatory systems and effectively respond to common industry issues. And the driving force to do that at that time was identified in the increasing globalization of the aviation industry. Now, this was in 2015. If we put this in the context, in the current context, I would like to use a quote coming from a completely different domain. This is from Mr. Michael Saul Dell, the owner of the American IT company with the same name. And he says, collaboration equals innovation. And I think this is a very important and true statement that when applied to aviation, it becomes still more relevant. Because basically, we could say that simply innovation cannot work without collaboration. And if you recall also the words of our director at the very beginning of this meeting today, it's exactly like that. Because new technologies require new regulatory framework. And any work in isolation is simply a call to fail. So if we want to quote in this case the famous movie Apollo 13, and failure is not an option for us, then we have remaining only two options, two scenarios. One is to go for ex post harmonization, that is certainly extremely relevant, important, but is highly demanding and has its own limits. Or the winning solution is, whenever possible, to work together upstream. And I have to say that this is exactly what I captured in terms of spirit and commitment of the four authorities working in the CMT. It's not easy sometimes to find the exact boundary between, let's say, ex post or upfront harmonization activities because of the several projects that are already ongoing and running. But few examples of the first ex post is certainly the harmonization of policies, guidance material, means of compliance, and interpretation of rules and standards, like, for example, what we are doing on eVTOL. While on the other side, we can see already some excellent and very promising examples of collaboration upfront, with the creation of recent task-specific teams on EHPS or on common mode errors. So that's exactly the way that we have to continue working together with our regulatory partners. And I just would like to add one more point, that is the commitment of the CMT since last month to prepare a specific dedicated roadmap. And on this, I can tell you that EASA is really working with a sense of leadership in obtaining that sustainability becomes a key element of any certification milestone for the future of aviation in the next decades. Now, if we want to, let's say, move from the strategic plan of the CMT to the implementation plan of the activities that we run with our regulatory partners, obviously we have to report about the progresses that we have made during the last year with the FAA in premise. And I'm glad to inform you that just last week, again in occasion of the CMT week, at the COB that we had with the FAA, it was signed the new revision 7 of the technical implementation procedure with FAA. This is an intermediate step between the dated revision 6 and the future revision 8, on which we are already working together with FAA. That will certainly represent an additional step forward, also in terms of complete review of the architecture of the document, but already contains some important improvements in terms of acceptance of AMOC by EASA, and also the inclusion of a policy that was already issued in April 2020. Acceptance of POAs without the boundaries of territory considerations, and the introduction of important principles and requirements in the domain of environmental protection, starting with noise and also CO2 emissions. There are more topics, of course, that are treated, like, for example, the mutual acceptance of Part 26. And then the other important news here is about the update on the main and selected task force that are all progressing very well. On eVTOL, we will have a dedicated meeting showing the very high commitment from both the top managements of the two organizations just next week in Washington, that we are confident will bring a lot of progresses in terms of harmonization of policies. Terms of reference for hydrogen. This also my pleasure to inform you that it was signed last week, and this is a working group that is very promising on a complete new technology, and the working group is expected to provide harmonized recommendation for the adoption and implementation of airworthiness requirement for both gaseous and liquid hydrogen for propulsion system. And last but not least, also the MML, that is a sensitive topic. Here again, we had an important progress since it's now under evaluation, a proposal coming from FAA on the possible split of MML between state of design and operational aspects. And the validation project review group that is working hard and with good strength to target common work plan template and dedicated guidance material in the area of level of involvement and to increase the predictability of validation activities. Now, very quickly with China, here we had also very positive progresses that had been made during the last week with a COB in June that was followed by a visit of the high-rank delegation of China in July. In that occasion, a letter of intent was signed together with the completion of validation projects and the signature of TCs, respectively for the Y12F and the Airbus H175B. Important progresses have also been made on the production matters. In particular, we have now the first Chinese production acceptances that have been issued for the CTSOA in 2023, and they are now listed on our website. I think we have a total of 3. And we have also a new meeting planned just the second week of November in China. With the Transport Canada, we have a solid, robust cooperation since years, very smooth. So I will go very quickly on this, just reporting on progresses made on lightweight validation plan that was implemented since February 2023. We have already some good assessment of this document. More will come with the AMAC meeting next week. We have common agreement also with Canada on the way ahead for a revision of TIP 6. And you can see listed the number of, revision of the TIP. And in this case, we have listed here a number of topics that will be treated. And a dedicated meeting will take place in Cologne, first quarter 2024. Just an aside note is on 5G, because we have been informed by Canada that there will be soon an implementation of, from the telecommunication industry of frequency in the range of 3.8 gigahertz that may have some consequences in terms of Cat2 and Cat3 approaches limitation, depending on the type of equipment. And in this case, we have asked and we have been reassured that Transport Canada will provide soon some communication to industry through a dedicated aviation safety alert. Let me complete the tour of the CMT regulatory partners with few words on Brazil. Here we have also a revision of the TIP that is ongoing. We expect to complete this by second quarter next year. Some elements of novelties are already reported and listed in this slide. In particular, there are few of them on which we still have to find a final solution and agreement. One in particular is on non-basic classification changes and how this may impact the level of involvement of the validation authority. And the second one is facilitation of exchange of Brazilian LSA and the EASA Part 21 light aircraft, where, as you could see from the presentation given by my colleagues, we may have some specific limitation related to the area of aircraft that will not be formally certified. OSD concept in ANAC, very good news because they are moving towards the EASA approach, more in premise on MML and flight crew training. And also we could see a very relevant interest of ANAC in the processes for early involvement in certification process for new technologies. So again, we are talking about alignment of processes, and they are asking for agency support on IPC, PAC, and tax. My time is already done, so I would leave to you this sort of backup slide that I prepared with some final updates on a selected number of additional partners. But I think that it's good for you to have some homework and look at that with more details, and we will be happy to provide more information if needed. So thank you. Thanks for your attention.
So thank you, Mario. I was checking Slido, and I see you have already a few questions. Okay. So they will be taken and addressed at the end of the session. And just as an illustration of this good relation, I would like to acknowledge and recognize the presence today of colleagues from TCCA and the FAA. Welcome to them. It's very nice to have them with us today.
Thank you.
So the next series of presentation will be more focused on how we interact with our stakeholders, with industry. So we have 3 presentations. The first one will be delivered by Colin and Ralph. And it's a very interesting, very dense presentation. So I'm looking forward to listening to their feedback about what has been done since last year's discussion on some of the topics that you raised. So Colin, the floor is yours.
So good morning, everybody. My name's Colin Hancock, and I'm the Head of Department for Policy, Innovation and Knowledge within the Certification Directorate. And together with Ralph, who's our Chief PCM for Initial Airworthiness, we're going to present to you the response to industry feedback. Okay, so I will start by presenting the sources of the feedback and the analysis of the feedback, and then Ralph will then join me and we will present the improvement actions that we are taking. So if we start by looking at the sources of the feedback, these are essentially coming from 2 sources. The first source is the Stakeholder Survey 2022, which was issued around about this time last year to all EU applicants. And the second source is from the Certification Conference last year on the Working Together EASA session. So if you were here last year, you will recall that Aptos presented some feedback in relation to STCs, and that was collected from the DM Tech and the SME DOA Alliance. And if you were here, the image there is something that I cut and took from their presentation as a bit of an aide-memoire. You may recall that that was one of the images that was shown. And also Lufthansa Technik presented last year in relation to DOAs. So if we start by looking at the stakeholder survey, we received in total 214 responses, and the overall feedback was that you were satisfied, and in some cases very satisfied with our services. And in general, we're agreeing with statements such as the application process and the applicant portal is straightforward and easy to use. So if we look at some highlights, certainly we received some positive feedback of what was working well. I don't intend to go down the whole list, but if you look there for some examples, 86% find our technical competencies adequate, and the same goes for transparency of technical aspects related to certification. 86% also find our certification basis and means of compliance clear. 95% are confident with the protection of confidential proprietary data. So you'll see there was quite a lot of good and positive feedback on what is currently working well within the system. But naturally, there were also some areas that you highlighted where we need to improve. So 42% of you stated that you were not satisfied with the implementation of the LOI requirements, and 40% expressed concerns regarding the timeliness and predictability of the certification process and did not feel well informed of their project progress status. And 36% stated that they were unsatisfied with CPIAC, while 30% are not satisfied with the communication throughout the project and found that our justification of technical decisions was sometimes unclear and lacking transparency. So if I move on to a reminder also of what we received in the conference last year, and the intent is certainly not to repeat the presentation that was given last year, but more or less to take some of the highlights and summarize what the feedback was that we received last year. So Aptos said well done for the COVID-19 special conditions and GM, the easy access regulations, and they like that the EASA staff are easily approachable for questions and a quick phone call or advice, and they were also very supportive on certification memoranda. But they highlighted areas of improvement, and in particular, assignment of resources, the spread of our guidance material throughout the system, the DOA's lack of involvement in some of the industry groups, and the availability of special conditions was also a concern. Whereas Lufthansa, they made in their presentation what they termed as general observations, and these related to EASA guidance and opinions, and the distribution of information and guidance is moving towards frequently asked questions was one of their concerns or observations. On introduction of regulatory changes, they were pointing out that information provided was becoming more sparse. In some cases, there was delayed information, and in particular referring to the release of AMC and GM material to support the requirements. And also an observation on EASA resources. So we took and analyzed the data that we received through this feedback. And basically, we determined that it could be grouped into 4 main areas. And the first area is LOI including performance ratings. And in particular, the areas that were coming out under this is the consistency of the feedback, the level of the understanding within some of the DOAs, frequency and availability of the data, and the fact that the whole overall process of LOI was bringing complexity. Second area identified was predictability, including resources. So that they were identifying that there was a lack of clear planning on timelines from an EASA perspective. Long response times, delays in process and availability of staff were a concern. The lack of transparency in communication. Assignment of the team is not necessarily based upon availability. CPIAC usage was not standardized amongst our teams. Lack of standardization of our experts. The PCMs, they observed, were acting more as coordinators only rather than certification managers on our side, and that there was no clear escalation path for the DOA team. And the third area identified was proportionality for small organizations. And here in particular, lack of small DOA involvement in the industry groups, too many new requirements in a short time period that were putting a burden on these small DOAs, and that the process, they commented, for them was focused more on large OEMs. And then the final area we identified was the rulemaking and guidance. So there was a request for more training to support regulation updates. Part 21 requirements should remain more stable was a request. AMC and GM is sometimes coming too late rather than at the time of the requirements. Guidance is too spread out between the AMC, GM, cert memos, and frequently asked questions. Access to special conditions is a concern, and a visibility of what is in work and what's coming next is also something that was identified. So now on to the improvement actions.
Thanks, Colin. As already introduced by Colin and Gregory, my name is Ralf Bader. I'm the Chief Project Certification Manager for Initial Airworthiness. So regarding the feedback that we have received and how we considered it and assessed that, regarding the LOI, including performance ratings, the consistency of feedback is a concern. So actually, we provide and have provided clear guidance and internal training for EASA staff. We did it in the past, but we constantly do it as well. So on a yearly basis, we provide updates. However, if you have clear observations, do not hesitate to share this with us, not inside the project, but on a DOA level, and we will consider this appropriately. Regarding the level of understanding within DOAs, so our DOA team leaders are available, and then also the PCMs to provide details as required to the single and individual design organization. And also we have planned a workshop now this week on Thursday to further come to a common understanding. Regarding the frequency and availability of our performance feedback, we have reviewed this internally and then have found possibilities to improve this. So we're going to have an internal automated tracking of EASA feedback. So this for sure should improve the situation. And implement a yearly project feedback for long-term projects. So this will not happen directly now, but this is in the pipeline of being introduced. Regarding bringing complexity, the DOA team leader and PCM work with the design organization where process shown to be problematic. So we have individual, but not too many design organizations who have maybe a system here which could be less complex, but we are open to improve that. We review constantly our certification memorandum on LOI, if it's up to date or if it can be improved. In general, yes, this LOI aspect, this risk-based approach, providing a risk assessment provides some complexity, that's true. On the other side, it brings two big benefits. First, we are more predictable and we are concentrating on the higher risk areas, so really on the safety important item. Secondly, if really applied constantly, we have the big benefit that you have your accepted certification program much earlier in the process than it was in the past. And here I would like to take this opportunity to remind you the certification program is part of the application, as you can read it in part 21. So it's essential that you provide your certification program early in the process, including everything, the cert program, the means of compliance, the methods of compliance, the level of involvement, the proposed one, including the risk assessment. And if you do it early in the process, you get an early feedback from us as well. And by this, you have much more predictability and many less issues that you might have had in the past inside a certification project. So please take this as a reminder, provide the cert program as early as possible, and this smoothens the process a lot. Yeah, short reminder on the LOI determinations. So applicants, you propose and justify per compliance demonstration item. Do we have novelty? What is the complexity? What is the criticality of your change? What is the panel specifics, the technical domain specific performance in your company? This results in the risk class 1 to 4. And based on this, you propose what kind of compliance data should be retained and in which kind of activities, test witnessing, something like that, we should be involved. Maybe reminder on the complexity. I think this is the most seen issue. Complexity doesn't change with your experience if something is novel or not. Complexity stays as it is. So something is of qualitative nature or for other reasons complex, and this doesn't change with your experience. And usually it would be perfect if we agree, and then you have immediately a certification program acceptance. If not, we determine, record, explain, and notify the changed values from an EASA perspective. Coming to the next slide, and there are only 2 steps. So we get a proposal from the applicant, from you, and we then determine, so we just accept what you propose, or we adapt it and explain why we adapt it, and this should be then the end of the story and go ahead. So level of involvement is an important step, but not such important on the other side as well. We're just talking about what do we see. And on the other side, according to 21A257, we can see everything anyway. It doesn't matter. Here we just talk about what is retained, where we are obliged to provide a feedback to you. So therefore, proposal, determination, and then we should stop it and do not waste our time. We should concentrate on the technical subject. So to stay efficient. Regarding the predictability, including resources. So some improvement actions, I think that was your slide,
yes,
right?
Yes, it's my slide. Thanks, Rob. So predictability, including resources. So here, one of the actions we've taken is to increase resources. So here you will see from this chart that in fact, currently, as the last 2 points are showing the 1st of October, so the beginning of this month, level of our resource and the end of the year. And here you can see that we are slightly above our 2019 staffing levels within certification. And while this chart looks like the trend is leveling off, you have to bear in mind the other points are yearly, but these last 2 are only a few months apart, and in fact we only expect 1 new start between now and the end of the year. But it's very much the intention that we continue to recruit throughout 2024, and there are already some new starters identified that will start at the beginning of 2024. And while we reach the level of staffing of 2019, it doesn't mean to say everything's okay. As you know, we still have issues in specific areas, as was already highlighted in relation to DOA. When you bring new people in, they are not necessarily matching the experience of the people that left, and naturally it takes a time for people to come up to speed. But what message we want to pass here, yes, we understand we need more staff. We've started the recruitment, and we will continue to address this issue. So on internal standardization training for PCMs and experts, this is another area that we've been active in. And to be honest, this is something that we do run on a recurrent basis. We take very seriously that we need to train our staff and we need to work on standardization. At the same time, when you work with people, you can never become 100% standardized. What I would say may have changed this year from last year is that we used very much the areas that were identified in the feedback to concentrate our training on standardization more towards these areas. Whereas in the past, as well as obviously naturally we train them on new requirements coming into force, but it is something that we do on a recurrent basis, and we also need to review the frequency with which we do this to ensure that we keep everybody passing the same message. We will add an escalation contact for DOA teams because this is something that was missing to the frequently asked questions. This has not been done yet, but it's very much an action on our list, our to-do list. And finally, a lot of the items coming under predictability, because you see on the right, what we have on the right here of the slide is the issues that we took from the feedback analysis. So we have been we have an initial airworthiness improvement, and that was running a number of different streams. It was presented at last year's conference. And one of the streams is on agility. And this work stream is looking very much at our predictability. Up to now, they've been working very much on larger, complex projects, how we handle the planning and the availability of resource to meet very large, complex, long-running projects. And currently, they are at the stage of having pilot projects with some of the applicants to see how the methods that we are proposing work to make these projects or make EASA's input more predictable and hopefully the whole project run more smoothly. But they are very much also going to be asked to look at all types of projects. So once we have looked at what works for the more complex projects, we will start to look at the smaller projects and how we can address the concerns such as lack of clear planning and timelines and assignment of teams and these other aspects that we have there on that. So this is something that we will work at. It's a bit more of a longer running action that we'll take to get results on that, but it's very much something that we are trying to address. And on proportionality of small organizations. So just to say some of the actions that have taken place, you may be aware that there has been a restructuring of the stakeholder advisory body, and this generally allows much more interaction from smaller organizations. And Gilles will present on this and how you can get involved with the stakeholder advisory board later on in this session. We are also continuing to seek feedback from groups involving small and medium DOAs, such as EASA. And so EASA will present next their feedback for this year. What we are presenting here is not a reaction to that, but very much a reaction to last year's, what we received from last year, because we need to take the time and ensure that we give it due consideration and respond to that. But we are very much interested in continuous improvement and getting feedback on a regular basis, and we want to receive that from all stakeholders. So not just the large OEMs, but their feedback is important, but also the small and medium DOAs, and this year we asked EASA to present on that. We generally anticipate that there will be a slowdown in Part 21 evolution, and this is a lot of the smaller organization. It is a big effort when they need to update their actions based on this. So while you've seen earlier, it may look like a lot, but in general, we see this as being a bit slower than in the past, and in particularly in relation to Part 21, which should make it more manageable for the smaller DOAs. And then finally, you will see in terms of the comment that the process was a bit focused on large OEMs. You will have already received this morning a presentation on initiatives such as Part 21 Lite that is obviously aimed at other segments than large OEMs. I already mentioned the restructuring of the SAB, which to allow more interactions, and also that we continue to get the feedback from the small and medium DOAs. And then I pass back to Ralph.
Thank you. Yeah, regarding rulemaking and guidance, we have seen that one comment was that more training needed to support regulation updates. So we do have systematic implementation plans to be provisioned, including sessions to inform stakeholders. We have already seen this morning presented by Rodrigo what's in the pipeline. Tomorrow, the day is for the SMS. And you remember years ago we had a huge exercise, this roadshow inside Europe for the 2019 Part 21 implementation. But we are always aware of it can be always better and then more to be done. And we consider also other communication means to be explored. We still think about how to do it, maybe via online training, something like that. Regarding Part 21 requirements should remain more stable. Colin said this already, that's noted, and a slowdown in Part 21 evolution is anticipated for the next years. Regarding AMC, GM sometimes coming too late, yes, Apologies for that. The target is to make AMC-GM at time we change the implementing rule or shortly after. Clearly this is our goal. Unfortunately, this was not always possible in the past, but we do our best. Guidance is too spread out, AMC, GM, CM, FAQs. So actually it's an ongoing task that we review to identify the FAQs and CMs that have already been incorporated in AMC and GM. So this is a constant process for the cert memos. For the FAQs, we have a slide later on. The access to special conditions. Actually all special conditions are available on our website. If this is good, more or less. However, not always easy to find. And we have a new interface being developed to more easily find relevant special conditions. There's an extra slide for this as well. And regarding the visibility of what is in work, regarding special conditions, cert memos, all this, there's a plan to publish a list of material that is anticipated to be amended and ultimately published. That's something I tell with an extra slide as well. Coming back to the AMC, GM, CM, and FAQs, concentrating first on the FAQs, they should clarify existing material only, but should not implement additional means of compliance or interpretive material. And if you identify the opposite, that this has happened, please inform us via the EASA website, contact us. It shouldn't be the case. So then we have the task to improve that situation. It shouldn't be the case. When an FAQ is covered by a later CS, AMC, GM, so even this clarification might go into the guidance material, the FAQ is planned to be deleted as well here. If you identify such things, do not hesitate to support us in the identification of it. Regarding certification memoranda, some clarifications. A cert memo is to provide guidance on a particular subject and may provide complementary information and guidance for compliance demonstration with the current certification specifications. It is not intended to introduce new certification requirements. That's really a no-go. This should be a special condition or directly CS, but not a cert memo. Or to modify existing CS and do not constitute any legal obligation. So maybe clarification here as well. Yes, a certification memorandum is a non-binding material, but that's also true for AMC GM. This doesn't mean that it does not need to be considered at all. So, and the easiest thing would be if you write a certification program and you see this cert memo is applicable, just reference it in your certification program, and we take it as it is. If you're not happy with that and you think it should be adapted for your specific project, then we have to implement it in a means of compliance or interpretive material CRE, certification review item, and adapt it accordingly. But if you can use it as it is, just implement it in your certification program, and we have no further administrative burden. That's the beauty of the tool. A cert memo is there to provide early awareness and should reduce discussions during the certification project. Oh, that's what I just said. Content of IM and MOC CREs that are of public interest and without proprietary data are planned to be published via cert memos. And the list of future certification memoranda in the order of priority will be published. So we have an ongoing task in-house to identify which interpretive material means of compliance that we usually issue with a certification review item is without proprietary data and of public interest, and put this first in a list that we show to you, to the public, what is in the pipeline, and secondly, to issue them accordingly, with the benefit, if it can be used as it is, we don't have this administrative burden to write CREs on that. This is going to happen. When an AMC GM rulemaking task covers a certification memoranda topic and the CM is considered as mature, the content is transferred into AMC GM material. So that's the usual process. If it's mature and the timeline fits, we introduce it directly into AMC GM. If it needs to go faster or we want to get experience with that is not fully mature yet, then we issue a certification memoranda. Yeah, please take them into account. They are all on our website. Coming to the publication and consultation of certification requirements and guidance, we have an EASA website that is going to be improved with new filters. So if we could go quickly to the EASA webpage, which is currently in place. Here you see this, considering the time, go up. We do not go into detail, but here you have the possibilities to search under consultation type. You can search for special conditions, certification memoranda, and so on. However, this filtering is suboptimal. This is well identified. It's not so easy to find exactly what you're looking for, and therefore, if we go back to the presentation now, we're going to improve our website in this way. So we have introduced new filters. For example, related certifiable product. So in the future, you will have the possibility to search, for example, for CS22 sailplanes and powered sailplanes. So you would not see any other related special condition, equivalent safety finding, deviation, interpretive material, such things. So you can search for the kind of product. You can also filter for the affected primary technical domain. So if you have, for example, in future a Part 25, CS25, large aeroplanes related special condition for structures, you can directly search for this, and it's much easier to find. And on top of this, there will be a slight adaptation on the type of consultation and publication. This is adapted according to the tools that we have in place. So we have special condition, equivalent safety finding, deviations, ETSO deviations, certification memoranda category 1. That means a cert memo based on a regulation, for example, Part 21. Or we have certification memoranda category 2, then it would relate, for example, to certification specifications, or could be independent but on a technical subject. And on top of this, we will have interpretive material means of compliance that are directly related to a special condition, which is usually published in one shot, since it's connected to each other. So this is what's going to happen. I was initially optimistic that it would be ready now to show you. Now I'm optimistic that it's ready by the end of the year. I hope I'm right. And now the last slide is for Colin.
Yeah. So and CPAC. So CPAC, you will recall, was one of the things that was highlighted in the survey, but it didn't come out of our analysis as being one of the core areas to address. And particularly in the survey, there was generally a lot of free text in the survey that would saying things like CPAC should have this functionality or a different functionality, and why can't we do that with CPAC? Just to say that some of these things we fully understood, some of them were even in work, and we've been working hard with CPAC to try and improve it, and you should find a lot of new functionalities already now within CPAC. And we continue to work on CPAC and improve it for the future. And on top of that, there was also a concern about more need for training on functionalities for best practice, both internal within EASA, because what they see from our staff, but also for the applicants. And we have recently conducted an internal round of training with EASA to provide training on the new functionalities and best practices to internal EASA staff. And there will be a workshop organized at the Part 21 implementation workshop on Thursday on CPAC, where you will be able to go and learn yourselves all about this. So I would highly recommend on Thursday that if you work on CPAC, you take in this workshop. I would also highly recommend that you take in the LOI one, which is being run by Ralph on Thursday. These have really been put there to address some of the feedback concerns that we have received. And that concludes our presentation on the feedback. So thank you.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you, Ralph. Just a slight correction for CPAC. There was no registration, so we had to cancel that one. So for Thursday, it was one of the offered workshops, but there was little appetite despite this feedback. Just one word. First of all, I would like to welcome Gilles Garouste on stage, our last speaker for this panel, who arrived a bit late. Just one word before we go to the next session. Or to the next presentation. I think that this presentation illustrates the dilemma that we are often discussing with industry, and we had a case just yesterday with the ASD stand, and I hope it helps you appreciate the kind of balance we are trying to find between, on the one hand, focusing our resources on operational activities and delivering and managing the projects and the organization approval as efficiently as possible. And on the other hand, the feedback we receive from you and the improvements which we identify ourselves, which require some policy development, some process improvements, but this comes at a cost because it's the same resources which we have to dedicate either to one or to the other task. So we are trying to find this subtle balance between focusing our resources on delivering, but at the same time, investing as much as we can into process improvements. And it's not an easy exercise, and I hope you will appreciate from the very good presentation from Colin and Ralph how we are trying to optimize the time that we dedicate to process improvements. So the next speaker is from industry, Ian Devine. I was trained by Colin yesterday on how to pronounce your name. I don't know how well I did it. Ian, you may correct me. So just a word of explanation about the approach. So Colin and Ralph worked a lot throughout the year on the feedback we received at this conference last year and in the feedback. So we thought it would be nice to report to you what we have done. Some of these activities are still ongoing. However, we didn't want to give the feeling that it was a one-off exercise. In our perception, this feedback and improvement process is a continuous exercise. So although we already have material and input from industry from last year, we still thought it would be useful this year again to get additional feedback and views from industry. And for that purpose, we invited another association, and Ian Devine is representing IAMA and is going to introduce himself and explain what his organization is doing. The floor is yours, Ian.
Thank you very much, Gary. And the pronunciation is perfect for originally a French surname. So, good morning all. Ian Devine is my name. I'm the Technical Affairs Manager with IAMA, the Independent Aircraft Modifier Alliance, and it is my privilege today to present to you the industry feedback for this session we have working with EASA. It's a very easy question to ask, what's it like to work with somebody? You could ask, what's it like to work with Ian? Some might say I speak too quickly and have been in a bad mood the last 2 weeks since Ireland were eliminated from the Rugby World Cup. While that might be a very personal opinion of an individual, it underpins how we gauge our working relationships, whether that be business to business or industry to regulator. And understanding that, we really wanted to reassess, as part of this year's presentation, how we gauge and qualify the working relationship that we as industry have with EASA. Particularly, as was mentioned in the earlier presentations, with the point of post-TC changes, retrofits, modifications, whether they be major or minor. It was Henry Ford who was credited with the quote that coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, while working together is success. And it's with this expectation of success in working together that I'm happy today to walk you through the capture approach of how we collected our feedback, a holistic overview of that feedback, and then finally some specific areas of consideration, including recommendations for improvement. What you will see after the presentation from Colin and Ralph is that we do have some synergies between what was presented last year and the areas that EASA are already working on, and what we've seen from our feedback capture during this year's activities. And this underlines what we see as areas where effort is needed on both sides in order to make a correct working relationship moving forward. We speak about life cycle an awful lot in the IAMA environment, whether that be life cycle of a product or a project, an aircraft or a type certificate change. We wanted to use this approach of life cycle and map that to the day-to-day business that a 21J has with EASA. Again, whether that be on a project-related modification point of view, or even across the life cycle of the 21J itself. We identified as part of this activity 25 interactions, touch points, that 21J has with EASA, and from this a survey was created. And I would just like slowly now to walk you through how we established those touch points themselves. So You see up on the top right the helicopter view of the product. Again, looking at post-TC changes. From a delivery, an aircraft will be modified, will be operated, will be repeated, will go through transfers, repeat, etc., up to end of life. And when we, from a 21J point of view, look at that modification, I mentioned it also had a life cycle, starting right at the first point when you receive an RFP, from the project kickoff, which is very important from us as industry, to baseline what that project is and execute against it. The main course of any STC or minor change being the development process, through to the prototyping phase, where STC or change is issued, serialization and rollout, and then after sales. From each of these, we're able to break down what touch points we have from a 21J to an EASA point of view. I'll start on the left. Very nice to hear last year the introduction of the pre-application service, that we can get in front of the curve in certain alignments. Project kickoff, again, setting the baseline of how we will interact with EASA through that modification itself. STC application, from an example, CP, special condition pre-issuance, familiarization meetings, and the topic that we mentioned earlier of LOI. The development as you're going through with the alignment of the experts and the acceptance of those special conditions and crees, all the way through to the point of STC issuance that we have at the end of the prototyping phase, moving into serialization where more aircraft are getting embodied, validation is ongoing, up to the point of then living with that modification for its life, to continue the worthiness aspect. We also took into account EASA being used as a validating authority, where there is bilaterals existing in place. And to look at the 21J life cycle, then you have your 21J surveillance, updating your handbook, the audits, etc., and what we classify as support. Having someone on the other end of the phone to ask questions to, whether that be a regular cadence, whether that be project-specific or non-project-specific. So from this, we did establish those 25 interactions that one has from your business day-to-day, project or organization related. As we created the survey, we were in the privileged position to utilize the EAMA global network, whether that be our own membership base, our own network past that, or our social media, in order to get this survey out to an adequate representation of the industry. As we've heard previously from the feedback in last years, the industry is not just large OEMs, multi-approval holders. We have SME organizations who might be just doing minor changes, who might be doing STCs once or twice a year, or maybe not at all. We wanted to ensure that this survey reached all those, so all those voices could be heard. Past that, we wanted to remove subjectivity from the definition of how our working relationship is. With this, we established a 3-grade system, good, medium, bad, where it was very important for us to identify business needs, what drives our bottom line as industry. On the good side, we're seeing that the interaction supports what we need as a business. There is no negative impact on customer perception, on schedule, on budget. Items that are not always understood on the PCM and the expert side as main drivers for us when we're performing changes. We might also have some small recommendations in place for those interactions. On the medium side, I'll use the word here that has been mentioned in the previous presentation of standardization. We're seeing variation across those interactions that we have. And we do see possible risk on what drives us from a schedule or budget point of view and a customer perception. And finally, repeated instances of issues with an interaction are driving bad ratings. We definitely have an impact on a customer perception, on our project, on our schedule. We see that the practical implementation of the idea behind the interaction is not being met. And with this, we were able to establish an easy traffic light or traffic rectangle system. Before I go in to give the actual output itself, I would like to take a moment to say where the output came from. I said earlier that we did establish a survey in order to gather all feedback from all industry participants, as part of this, we asked where the majority of your business was performed with regard to EASA interactions. And as you can see on the right, that was split into 4 areas. I perform majority of STCs, I perform majority of minor changes, I utilize EASA as a validating authority, or other, whether I'm just starting my journey as a 21J, or I utilize EASA in another capacity. Not surprisingly, 67% fall under the STC category. That is not to say that under that 67%, they're all multi-approval holders. We can have very small organizations who do have the privilege for STCs, and I'm happy to say that that is the case on the 67%. From the smaller organizations doing a very small number of STCs, maybe not even one a year, up to the ones who already have the privilege to approve their own STCs. In general, the majority of the responses were rated good or medium from an average point of view. However, we did see an awful lot of variability in what different organizations and industry members were reporting back. As you'll see later, special condition and CRE issuance, there was a 50% split between good or medium and bad. This is the average feedback that we have got. As I mentioned, with 47% good, it was the majority. Bad filling up 11%, with medium filling the rest at 42%. I would like to pause at this point and give a big thank you to all the organizations who did contribute in the feedback. From us, as an alliance representing industry, we work on the feedback that we do get in from our members and beyond. So on the right, and in the interest of time, I won't go deep diving into everything, but you can see, using this traffic light system, how everything was graded. There are 5 areas that we highlighted gold that I would look at as additional areas of consideration. Now, this is certification program and the acceptance of this. As we mentioned earlier, we saw it mentioned in the previous slides, but it does define the baseline of how we implement and execute our projects. LOI acceptance, special condition and CRE issuance, particularly then also linked to LOI to an extent, the DOA dashboard feedback, and last but not least, DOA handbook changes. We've seen this morning with the presentations, an awful lot coming down the line, so it's important for us to capture the feedback of how we're living with this on a day-to-day basis. We established these 5 areas based on variance between feedback, some organizations saying it was good, some organizations saying it was bad, or if we saw multiple repeated industry feedback of the same issues happening again and again. Past this, we did also give, as part of our survey, a free text option, and we did get much appreciated, valuable feedback on other areas past these interaction touchpoints. So what I would like to do next is walk through those 5 areas of consideration. And I'll start with the CP. So as you can see here, the majority was rated on the medium, but we have more bad than good when we look at all the responses. I mentioned it before, CPs for us as industry define that baseline. It defines our expectations that we can execute against, and inherently will then drive our internal project cost and schedule, and finally, our customers' expectation of what we deliver into industry. We see that they're not always being formally approved, and when they are being approved, it is not at the correct time in the life cycle of the modification project itself, i.e., not as early as they need to be. Past this, on our exchanges on CPs, the feedback is not always in a common format, depending from PCM to experts. It can come via PDF, via Excel, via SEPIAC. And past this standardization issue with the feedback, depending on project to project, panel to panel, we are seeing a large variation, especially regarding to turnaround times. Understanding, of course, that resources are an issue and multiple things happening at the same time is a struggle from both sides. But the turnaround times and lack of standardization was a massive point that came up multiple times in the feedback. Our recommendations for this: firstly, regarding feedback, standardize this communication means that I have one way to understand what's coming back, and we establish the 2-way traffic. The format of that means, and more importantly, the turnaround times. what can we as industry expect as an adequate turnaround time for a certain CP issuance and application? Past this, in order for us to establish our baseline for execution of any project, formally approve the CP at the correct time. This then will also be talked a little bit later in LOI when we talk about project creep. Fully appreciating that schedules are a massive point of contention on both sides, execution of the schedule, but also understanding that these things do need bilateral agreement and constant touch point as creep starts to come in. EASA witnessing, the alignment of experts is a particular point where bilateral agreement is needed to be established early and then touched upon as it progresses. Past this, on LOI, again here we see majority in the medium corner. Good is outweighing bad, but from a feedback point of view, is that the expectations that we have from an LOI per AMC and guidance material, per our DOHs, isn't equaling the actual requested documentation that we see at the end of a project. Touching on the certification program from earlier, even if the CP is accepted earlier in the project, we're seeing repeated instances where LOI is raised to a different level, documentation being requested additionally during that project execution. Overall, we do not see that the implementation of LOI currently is reducing the efforts that we have in expert alignment, mainly driven by the necessity to have additional expert alignment as we get to more critical phases during our development and prototyping phases. And last but not least, and I will touch on it on a subsequent slide, the DOA performance linking. Understanding the impact that the DOA dashboard has on our applicants' perceived risk is something that is very important to talk about, that I will touch on later. Recommendations, again, we'll have a link into what was discussed previously. Utilize the PCM in their intended role, to have a more active role in agreeing and, more importantly, enforcing that LOI throughout that project once that baseline is set. The DOA performance, just to speak quickly, the lack of the input is negatively affecting ourselves when we do go around to look at the performance that we have to define the LOI class. Touching on a repeated topic, also from last year and from Colin and Ralph said, special conditions and crees. Again, this is where we see a 50-50 split, 50 good, 50 bad and medium. Touching on setting baselines, familiarization meetings, alignment and agreement of the applicability. We are seeing some shift and some creep in what was originally defined in familiarization meetings versus what's finally expected prior to STC issuance. What we're doing an awful lot as industry is we're using our own proactive approach to use common knowledge, what we've used previously as part of projects, to suggest crees or IP crees that are not openly accessible. Sometimes this results in additional discussion. That doesn't mean its intent. On the plus side, we do see that what is openly acceptable can be closed very quickly. So this underlines the improvements that already have been brought in place by making these more visible to us as industry, that we can understand what expectations there might be. And touching on the timeline topic as well, and again, this is two-side and two-way traffic, the closure of special conditions and crees are not always at the required time in the project. If we can, we would like to see them as closed as quickly as possible so that we can understand and execute on that agreed compliance methodology. The short recommendation here is to continue on the work that's already been mentioned earlier today, continue to give increased access to industry, whether that be the annexes, that's very well, or the generalized listings that we see coming down the line. Again, predictability. Knowing what we need to comply to will allow us to better implement that. Now on to the two last areas, DOA dashboard feedback. We can see here that there is no slice of green in the pie, medium or bad. One of the first feedbacks was that it's only taking STCs and major changes into account. If I look at continued airworthiness activities where EASA are involved, at this point in time, we're not seeing that any credit has been taken from those activities. Past this, and touching on my earlier point of person-to-person interaction, We see high levels of individual subjectivity in this feedback, plus a lack of feedback being given, which has a domino effect on how we later then classify our DOA performance and our LOI. Again, recommendations here focus back on the PCM, empowering the PCMs to reinforce this transparency at the end of the project, ensuring all stakeholders do contribute, whether this be a mandatory feedback input or having washout sessions in place. And plus, we would like to raise the possibility to assess DOA's inputting into the feedback also, to make this a two-way street. And to finish on more greener pies, the DOA handbook changes and updates, majority here good. We spoke a lot about PCMs during this presentation, so I would like to touch on the DOA TLs also. Feedback, as you can see here, overall good, very supportive, very positive relationships after being developed and maintained. On the other side of the coin, as has been touched on earlier today, the long turnaround times, low feedback for the larger changes, especially those ones that we have coming down the pipeline. The perception is a highly overloaded team. That resource has been identified as a key issue. Recommendations here are simple enough. Continue the positive culture that we see instilled between the team leaders and the DOAs. And as always, increase the resource and availability of those teams. In closing, returning back to what I said earlier about personal interpretations of individuals, we do deal in a person-to-person nature. We do deal in an international industry, which is one of the good things about aviation. These working relationships will always be influenced by personal nature. It does not mean, however, that we always have a large variety depending on who I'm speaking to. What's important for us is that we have predictability. This allows us to operate in the changing environment that we have, whether it be commercial, regulatory, or innovation. We've seen earlier today, proportionality between smaller and larger organizations is very applicable. Not one size of shoe fits all. But on the other side, the appreciation of how industry and our customers perceive what we're doing, the value that we bring. So the impact of this customer perception and what drives our bottom line is very important. I've discussed today the working together. What is very important also is the interaction on rulemaking and the input on rulemaking and the independent modifier voice for this. Colin and Ralph already mentioned an SAB, and Gilles will be presenting in a minute how this restructure is taking place. In closing, as always, appreciate EASA's openness for the feedback, the fact that this year the independent modifiers have a voice and the ability to speak, that we've had this last year as well. And I would like to give the final thank you to all of our members, especially the Certification Authority Affairs Working Group in EAMA, who contributed to this. And a big thank you again to everyone who input on this survey. As a last word, if you would like to contribute or continue providing feedback to any of our activities, visit us online, or you can catch me after the conference. And while I don't have any more rugby quotes to say, because we're not in the championship on the weekend, I'll leave it in the word of Michael Jordan. Talent wins games. We can get you individual changes on talent alone, but to win a championship, we need teamwork and intelligence. And it's on this that I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And I'm a few minutes early, so I can take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Ian. So we'll keep the time that you say for the question afterward. We'll take all questions at once. So our next and last speaker for the morning session is Gilles Garouste. Gilles, maybe you introduce yourself and then you can go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's always a pleasure to attend those DOA workshops. There are so many people interested in showing that it's so critical activity. So I'm very pleased to see all those faces, some of them well known. So my name is Gilles Garouste. So I'm working at Dassault. and I'm a lot involved in the work of associations, and the subject of today is a work at the SAB level. And on the next slide, you will see what it's about. So what you have to know is that the SAB, the EASA Stakeholder Advisory Body, is a formal body which is established by the basic regulation that also established the EASA. So it has to exist, and the basic regulation requires the management board to establish this advisory body. So it has been done. So the latest version is from 2015 and early 16, where the so-called SAB, Stakeholder Advisory Body, has been established with a notion. The approach is made by sector. So the management board decision differentiates the sector of manufacturers with the sector of general non-commercial aviation, with the sector of aviation personnel, etc. You will see the list later on. After the SAB is established by this management board decision in line with the basic regulation requirements, we have a rule of procedure, document rule of procedure, which is available on the EASA website. And there has been a new version released in April this year that I will explain today. So just from where are we coming? From the very beginning of the EASA, there has been an EASA advisory body, and there has been at that time safety standard consultative committee. So many of you should have heard of the SSCC name with its subcommittees. The problem we had at the time is that EAB and SSCC were working independently from each other. And the other problem is that if you were not involved personally in one of these groups, you do not have access to the information. So it's not making the work easier for those willing to represent the membership of an association. Then in 2017, there was an initiative to merge the previous EAB and the SSCC. And so the SAB has been created at that time. So it has ensured a better coordination between the strategic and rule-making matters. But the drawback was that the SAB at that time was made of a fixed structure of group and with a limited seats available and with access to the information restricted also. So it was working better than before, but not as good as we were expecting. And that has led us to the 22 version of the rule of procedure. The key word for me is inclusion, after the merging of 2015. So inclusion is made through the notion of communities, where anybody in this room can join one of the SAB community. So they are steering groups driving the activities in the communities. The other new animal in this new SAB setup is a formal SAB work program, where we will try to identify work program items, and I will develop that a bit later. The other key features is to have activity groups. We expect them to be agile, so to be established quickly and to work according to controlled time frame so that they deliver as expected. We want to avoid working groups meeting for years and delivering not that much. And the other big novelty is that the members of the communities will have access to the same level of information as the SAB plenary member. So it's a huge change in the setup. So with more detail, so you have the SAB organization. On top, you have the so-called SAB plenary, which is the only formal body reporting to the management board. you have the SAB work program. Then you have the 6 communities. You will have the list on the next slide. And they will be driven by a steering group, a community steering group, that will control the work program items of interest for those communities. For example, community of air sport, they will have their own steering group, and they will have their own work program items. And that's where I may have to click. No, it's not the V2 of the slide. It's not the V2 version of the slide. So some information is missing. So the work program items will involve all the stakeholders. So not only the industry, but also the EASA and also the member states when it is relevant. So it means that when there is an agreement to work on a work program item, it means that in a given time frame, the resources of the stakeholders, of the agency, and or of the member states will be available with an agreed objective. So that's one of the key features of the new setup. So and then the work program item will be given to an activity group, either an existing one or one set up only for this specific purpose. The membership of this activity group will be on a knowledge based, and they will be able to work across a community. So, as said, there will be temporary activity groups dealing with the work program items that will have to be addressed in a given time frame, or they could be permanent because they are recurring issues that have to be discussed with the EASA. You will have better ideas later on. So the communities we are having, so they are a number of 6. Commercial aviation, general aviation and non-commercial, rotorcraft aviation, drone and UAM, air traffic control and navigation services, and aerodromes. So any of you should be a member of one or several communities in this list, depending upon your area where you are working and your knowledge. The membership of these communities, again, it's open. So it is not open to the public. It means that you have to be endorsed by the SAB governing board, the plenary. But your name can be proposed by one association which is already a member of the SAB, or could be proposed by any entity and then sponsored by an association which is a member of the SAB. So that's the way we have to work according to the current management board decisions. So anybody, so it could be somebody from a university, could be somebody working at a company, somebody working for an association, somebody working for a standard development association. So it's based on your knowledge and the contribution you can deliver to the communities. So as of end of September, we had already more than 800 names in those communities. Then this slide, just a focus, it's the last one, is just a focus about what kind of activity groups already exist and could be of interest for the audience of today and hearing your presentation before. So there is one which is missing, which is a digitalization activity group, number 2. So you have group 5 working on a strategy for certification of EU product and design and organization. So it's the main interlocutor is Rachel, and most of the EASA guys sitting here are also members of this activity group. Then we have. You may know that we had before a DMTech, Design and Manufacturing Technical Committee, made of people having to cover all the scope of the DMTech activities a lot. So it has been decided to split this scope into more specialized scope. So that's why you have an activity group focused on Part 21 DOA, another one on what is the certification of fixed wing product, rotary wings, etc., etc. So if you are a member of a community, you can join one of these activity groups as a member or as a follower, meaning you will not be invited to meetings, but because of everything is transparent, you will have access to the EASA SharePoint site and be able to follow what is discussed in those groups and possibly contribute offline. Voilà. So that's the end of my message. So join. Into the world. We try to be inclusive, so don't miss the possibility to join those communities and contribute to the work. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gilles. So thanks to all the speakers for these very inspiring presentations. I saw that it triggered a number of questions in Slido. Some of the questions might be referred to the colleagues, HODs, whom I would like to acknowledge, Frank Stephens, Michael Singer, and David Solar. So they are here at the front, and they may take some of the questions which are maybe more specific to their fields of competence. I saw that many of the questions, Mario, are for you, in the most liked ones. So maybe you want to take the first ones, and if you need support from some of the colleagues, HODs, you can just pass the floor to them. So maybe we want to start with the first one on PMA.
Well, I would say on the second one, for sure, I can say that no. What about PMA parts? Is EASA working on similar concept? Not that I'm aware, at least not in the context of...
Maybe, Colin, you want to answer that one for the rulemaking part on the EASA side?
I mean, the PMA parts is a US concept, and there is no plans to copy or implement that into EASA requirements.
So this answers the first two questions. So LOI, oops, which time frame should I see?
Yeah, maybe I should answer. So under which time frame should the applicant receive a feedback on the certification program, LOI included? So yes, first, the LOI is always a part of the certification program. You don't get an LOI acceptance, you get an acceptance of the certification program finally. Our target is to provide a feedback inside 4 weeks. I know that we are not always able to do that, especially if you have a bigger project. If I get 20 certification plans, programs for one project, that's not possible to provide the feedback in 4 weeks. That's our target. We do our best, we know our resource issues, but that's the target.
Thank you, Ralph. So I think we see the question from Alexander, which we deferred this morning on the EHang, and on that one we'll give the floor to David Solar.
Hello? Yes. So on the first eVTOL, I think, and not specific to EHang, but so far no eVTOL are part of bilateral scope. So they are specifically excluded. We are working on mutual recognition so far and harmonization. First eVTOL, they are not in the standard CSE, so it's still special condition, and so evolving framework. And specifically on the EHang, yes, we've seen the recent Chinese certification, and the CAC published roughly 2 years ago, I guess, some special condition that we try to translate, which was very similar in the frameworks with the EASA special condition. Now, you know what? On the means of compliance they have used, it's still very blur. We don't know, and nothing has been really transparent on that. So that's where we are, knowing that also EHang is not piloted, so it's more a drone than a eVTOL, a manned eVTOL as of today. But to make it short, it's not recognized in the mutual recognition and not under the bilateral.
Thank you, David. I see, Joaquin, you wanted to say something. So, Joaquin, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Joaquin Duran. So I'm the section manager recently appointed for EASA. I wanted to come back to the FAA-related questions. There was one regarding PMA parts, and then this other one about parts without Form 1. So the update here could be that there is a working group being set up under the title of CSR, Certificate Release Certificate. Sorry. And then, yeah, so these elements are being discussed and will probably be introduced as part of this, but it will not happen anytime soon. We just had the initial discussions. So there is a highly chance that it will be updated in the next TIP revision. And as for the PMA, there is no foresee update or changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Joaquin. I don't know for the next one on the HPS whether Frank or Mario wants to take that question.
Well, I think that there is quite a level of detail that is asked on this one. Well, I can say that there are several phases of the TST that are planned. I think to remember, but I'm going by heart here, that phase 1 has been successfully completed, and the group is now moving on the second phase. I think we can provide more detailed information upon request at a later stage. I don't know,
Frank, if you want to add anything on the HPS cooperation with the FAA.
It's not only with the FAA.
It's CMT. Yeah, you're right.
CMT.
Yeah.
So there is one task force because it's one TSD. But please, Frank.
Yes. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Frank Steffens, responsible for propulsion and environmental protection systems. On the TST, we are working closely with the FAA. Basically, FAA and the EASA have a kind of leading role in this dimension. We are working together with ANAC, Brazil, and Transport Canada as well. And we are in constant exchange on understanding each other rules and the way forwards, and trying to harmonize as much as possible. The short-term target is not to have harmonized rules in place, but to better understand how to implement the same safety levels on both sides. So this activity is going on a regular basis. We are directly involved. We are co-chairing the TST on the EHPS and are quite successful in getting to common opinions. And as Mario said, we have more details available if you're interested on what specifically has been exchanged most recently. But we are striving to a common approach, which is in the interest of the industry, of course. So.
Thank you, Frank and Mario.
So in the end, I mean, the activity is really delegated to the task forces, and the last meeting was, I think, 2 weeks ago. So I do not have the most updated details to share here, but of course the information is available. What we can say is that for sure the work is progressing very well and very promising. The following question, if I can, it's about more details on the
for the hydrogen. Maybe you can start, and maybe Colin can complement as you want.
As I said, the terms of reference was just signed last week. So I expect that it will be very soon also published on our website. If you want to provide more details.
I mean, just to say the terms of reference, the objective of the group is that we work together with the FAA to start with a harmonized position from the very beginning in terms of requirements and means of compliance for hydrogen. The agreement is that we start by looking at fuel cell configurations in the first instance and later move to more hydrogen burn. As it was only signed last week, in fact, that the group has not actually started, and we're still in the very early phases of identifying members to work on that. But yes, the idea is that we start off harmonized from the beginning, essentially.
Thank you, Colin. The next question goes to Ian on certain major changes.
Thank you for the question. We do have members who do have these privileges, and they are utilizing that. So we haven't seen anyone who has shied away from the opportunity to use it. It is very attractive to the industry to utilize it. I would caveat it again, what I mentioned earlier regarding the slice of the industry, and to ensure that there's proportionality between the organizations who can implement that and the organizations who aren't at the stage that they are in a position to utilize it. But in general, the principle is very well received.
Okay, thanks. By the way, we have mics, huh? So if some of you have connecting issues during that session, you may raise your hand and we may take a couple of questions from the room. But I see there are many in Slido, so let's go on. The next one is for you, Ian, as well on the survey.
Yep. What I presented today did not take certain metrics into account regarding the size of the organizations, but we are performing a second step to utilize some data mining to understand, is there certain metrics where we see size of the 21J, maybe the national authority that they were dealing with, if it was delegated, the type of projects, cabin changes is a large item, major versus minor, to understand where there are certain aspects that we can take out for particular areas of additional consideration.
Thank you. So the next question is about basic STCs, and that one is probably for you, Mario.
Yes, and indeed there are also some provisions that are included in the tip 7, and on this I would like to say that again the revision 7 will be uploaded on our website very soon, and there is also a common agreement with the industry to have a dedicated webinar also to provide more details. So I think it's quite a comprehensive approach that we would like to give to the new tip.
Thank you, Mario. Raluca, the next question on CMT was already addressed on the EHPS.
Yeah.
So the question on cert memo, oh, it's moving. So let's go on with the cert memo, maybe for Ralph.
Yeah, regarding, will all new certification memoranda derived from interpretive material or means of compliance CRE be subject of public consultation before final publication? No. This is just one source, so, and we want to make them public, that it's less a surprise. As interpretive material and means of compliance that are already issued via CREs shall go into the public domain via the tool of a certification memo, but that's not the only source for cert memos. So if we have completely new technical guidance or new items, they could go directly into certification memoranda, they could go directly into AMC GM. It's just one possibility.
Thank you. So the next question on PCM training, it's between international and policy. So Colin, I don't know.
Well, I can say we do provide training courses internally available for our PCMs on validations and tips, etc. And they are strongly encouraged to take these. So yes, we provide them. Maybe we need to be a bit more systematic in ensuring that that they are followed, but it's certainly the intent.
And complementing this answer, we have yearly trainings, so-called plenary for experts in PCMs, and there are also changes in the tip or working arrangements are trained as well.
Thank you, Ralph and Colin. So the next question is about feedback on LOI. So I don't know whether Colin or Ralph wants to take that one. It's moving. Sorry, if you see us moving, it's because as you like questions, they move in the order. So I was referring to the first one.
So it's still difficult to get the evaluation from the expert in PCM regarding even the closed project, what improvements expected. Actually, this shouldn't happen anymore. So in the past, it happened that the project in our system, CEPIAC, was not closed, and therefore this was not transferred. So we have now, latest after 3 months, a reminder. So this should not happen anymore. And on top of this, what was included in our presentation, we will have an automatic check in CEPIAC as well. So improvements are already implemented and on its way. So I don't expect such item anymore in the future.
Thank you, Ralph. The next one is what I would call the specific question. So I don't know.
I don't know which one this is, but
the one on the CM21.
No, but I don't know the number off by heart what it's referring to,
I don't know,
and actually I don't have visibility on whether it's planned. I don't know. Oh, hang on, I think Rodrigo, do you know that one?
Well,
so this one, because I just looked it up, it's not that I know all of them by heart, is related to the classification of design changes to cabin interiors. So we do look at all published certification memos systematically and try to incorporate those into AM system guidance material. This one, unfortunately, we still need to work on it, so it will not be, for example, in the next update of Part 21 that we are working on at the moment.
Thank you, Rodrigo. So the next one is maybe for you, Ralph.
Yes, can complexity level be decreased if the changes are well known by the company for certain changes? Answer is easy, no. This is considered by the novelty, so if it's well known, it's not novel anymore. If it's well known as well, I would expect that this is a high performer if it's so well known, and by these two criteria, our involvement should be already at a lower level. And therefore the complexity stays what it is. So it's still complex regardless of how well known it is.
Thank you. For the next one, I don't know whether Joaquin, you want to take it. So if somebody can pass the mic behind you, Rodrigo, the question on part 145 and POA.
Yep. So as a 145 team leader that I was up to 6 months ago, it's true, part 21, we don't have the details. But if we look into part 145, in there we have a lot of details about what are the manufacturing not manufacturing, the fabrication, we call it privileges under the 145 or maintenance organizations. Whether we need to transpose those into part 21, I'm not the right person to say, but we can find a lot of information under 145 Alpha 42 for the fabrication of parts under MOA.
Thank you, Joaquin. So the next question is probably for Mario on tip Ref7.
Well,
sorry.
I think it's more for me, if I may.
If you wish.
So will the final special conditions be published? That means not only the versions put into comments. Clearly, yes. So we always have a proposed special condition, and then we have a comment response document and the final special condition, which shall be on our publication page. I have shown this during my presentation. So, and thank you very much for the question. There's also an improvement going on. So in future, we will have a unique reference for the special condition itself. So up to now, it's always covered by a certification review item. In future, what we want to do is to publish the special condition under its own unique reference. And by this, if you need the special condition for your new project, you can just take it as it is. If you need discussions on the item, we still issue a certification review item. If you can take it as it is, no certification review items will be needed anymore. You just implement it in the certification program to be accepted by us finally, and then the job is done.
Thank you, Ralph. I was already on the tip Ref7. We have Ilimar in the room. I don't know whether, Mario, you want to take that one, or Ilimar, if you can. Maybe Ilimar can support. It's quite specific on the noise question. So it's great. We have really a lot of expertise in the front row from EASA. So Ilimar, if you can introduce yourself. I think it's on already.
Okay, Elimar Bilas, Section Manager, Environment and Sustainability in the Certification Directorate. So the question is, could you provide more information as regards to EASA FAA TIP Revision 7 when it comes to noise regulations? So to make it very short, the update mainly that is going to be of benefit to you is that the TIP Revision 7 will contain 2 attachments which typically list examples of basic and non-basic changes that should guide the expectations of applicants, but also the involved validating authority and certifying authority, what changes will likely see validation authority involvement.
Thanks a lot, Ilimar. Many questions for Ralph today. Huh?
Yeah, it looks like it. So we are seeing cert memos enforced as the only acceptable means of compliance. Can you clarify the status and intent of the CM? So it's not acceptable to have this as the only acceptable means of compliance. A certification memorandum, as we said, is in principle non-binding in the same way as we have AMC and GM. However, it's something in place, so you have to consider that. And if you find a different means of compliance meeting the intent of the cert memo, that's always fine, and we would issue a means of compliance decree based on the discussion. It's always the easiest means to take the AMC GM in place or a certification memorandum in place, but it's not enforced as the only means. So you can always propose something else which meets the same intent.
Thank you, Ralph. So the next one is for you, Ian.
Yep. Particularly regarding changes to cabin modification classification, minor, major, it referenced the question we had earlier on the certification memo. We have had feedback on it. It has divided a little bit of industry on the utilization of it. Mostly our feedback is that what might have been classified as minor is now going in the major direction, and this does increase the level of DOE-EASA interaction. We do have it on our roadmap for next year to assess if we want to look a bit deeper into this and collate more feedback. So if there is anything additionally to be added, it would be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on it as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. The next one, I think, Colin, is more a proposal that there is a need for better guidance on the EASA Form 1. I don't know, Rodrigo, if you want to add something?
What I would like to add is that we have already published a certification memo on parts without Form 1, especially touching upon how the approval holder will do this classification on safety impact on those parts. If there are other issues that need to be addressed or need to update the CMO, yeah, we're happy to know.
Thank you. We are getting towards the end of the session, so maybe we can take a couple of questions and then we'll have to close for the morning session. So the next one is kind of specific. I'm not sure who wants to take it. Do you think, Colin?
Well, from my knowledge, I mean, you apply for a major repair approval. It depends what privileges you have to a certain extent, but normally for a major approval, it would need to come through EASA and go through the process. So.
Yeah, maybe to
maybe Ralph can add, yeah.
We don't have a representative in industry as is the case for the FAA. The system is different. So therefore, if you have an AOG major repair design approval, this is for sure a high priority for us, and we should work quickly on that. But it's still an EASA task to approve this major change if you don't have the privilege to do it on your own, as already commented by Colin.
Thank you. So the next one,
I think it's
minimum competence. I think ASD Stan is working on this as well. So who's the author of the question on NAS 9945? I don't know if anyone wants to take that question. I think it rings a bell to me like something which ASD Stan is working on. So we have an interest and we are struggling to find resources, but as soon as we can identify the right resource, we will work with ASD Stan on this topic. So crew management. Ralph, you want to take that one?
What is a way of working? Okay, new EASA way of working for crew management, unique reference where this new approach is described. How will it be shared with industry? So we are just in the process of implementing it. So we have to share this internally. But you will be informed by our people when it will be really in place. At the moment, we are just providing the environment. So it was a bit pre-announcement from my side today that you are less surprised then. But we will inform you accordingly soon. I would expect maybe beginning of next year, maybe by your PCM, maybe by the DOA team leader. We have still to agree on how to do it, but you will be informed.
Thank you, Ralph. I would like to thank you and all the speakers. The questions which are not addressed now, you can use the lunchtime period to address them to the EASA colleagues who will be available for you. The afternoon session will be moderated by Colin. So I have to thank you all for your interest in the presentations, for the lively interactions, and for the very relevant questions. So thanks a lot for this interesting exchange this morning. Now it's time for lunch break. So lunch is served to the left, and we reconvene at 2 o'clock. So enjoy the lunch and see you later.